What's going on, guys? It is Murderink here, back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. Now today I have a rather special video for you, something that's really important. I'm not going to tell you to spread it out to people. I do, however, would prefer it if you would let people know what I'm going to tell you, because it's going to be extremely important for this fusion. As you saw from the thumbnail, Fane as well as Barath aren't properly working. I don't want to say as intended, but it's very different than what we've seen, and it's different than what people have talked about when they've talked about these champions. So unfortunately, I fed my Fane to make sure I could use that sausage frog after finding out this very disappointing information about Fane and how she really works. So I definitely want to go over that. I want to show you a clip on how I figured this out while testing the clan boss, because I did say I was going to do a clan boss video for you guys testing the fusion champions. I'm really glad I did, because something happens when you're not using a 2-to-1 ratio that you wouldn't catch unless you were doing a normal clan boss team, the same 1-to-1 speed tune with or without a counterattack, so on and so forth. The first champion I want to talk about is going to be Fane, who is probably a skinwalker. Is she? Yes, she is. Okay, so the problem is there's a condition where she will never use her A3. Now, how important is the A3? Let's be honest. Defense down and weaken being applied, and I figured out that there is actually a situation where she is not applying this to the clan boss at all in the entire run. Now, if you don't know this already, Fane works exactly like Draco, where if there is a defense down on the boss, she's going to elect to not use this skill anyways and use one of her other skills. However, even if there is no defense down or weaken on the boss, she's actually skipping this, and it has to do with, unfortunately, her A1, which has a 35% chance of stealing 5% of the target's current turn meter. So this is an awful interaction for them to have kept. We've seen many champions like this. Razen, for example, can be tuned to never use his A3 in the clan boss, and the same exact thing is in fact going to happen with Fane here, and it's much worse for Fane, since this is an A1 ability, whereas Razen is an A3 ability with like a 7-turn cooldown if you don't book it. So the fact that it's an A1, this is actually taking away from her using her poisons, from her using her defense down and weaken. So this is very bad. This is extremely bad, and it makes her a lot less valuable as a champion. Now, there is something interesting about this A1 that we are going to talk about, but first let's go over the second champion here. And the same exact thing is going to apply to the second champion, which is Barath the Blood-Soaked. And it's not all bad news. I don't want this to be a very grim video, even though what we just found out about Fane is pretty bad. But the next part of what happens with Fane and what's going to happen with Barath is actually going to make Barath the Blood-Soaked probably the best clan boss champion out of the entire fusion, which is really cool, and it's kind of shocking. You can say, what about Fane? She has poisons. This guy was actually out damaging her based on what I found. So that's really cool. And obviously you can only make the comparison assuming that defense down and weaken isn't a priority for you, or simply going off of how much damage these champions can do. So now that we went over the champions, we talked about what they do. This champion does decrease the turn meter. However, there is not a similar effect. He will still use his A2, he will still use his A3, so all of this is perfectly fine with Barath. However, Fane still remains to be the disappointing champion. So now let's head into the run. You can see the champions I'm using. As mentioned and as promised, we do have Fane here, we have Kaiden, and we have Barath. If you want to know the gear they're using, even though this is a test run and the point isn't really to show you this clan boss team, you can look at all of my champion spotlight videos. I kept the gear all the same for these champions. So we're going to hit play here, and we're going to see the cool, pretty much we're going to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. Not to quote something that's very old, but that's what we're going to be doing here. And I do have this on 1x speed, and I will pause it when the time comes right. Let's see. Okay, so the first thing we saw here is the A2 ability from Barath. So let's go and check this really quick. A2 ability attacks one enemy 2 times. The first hit places a shield. The second hit heals all allies for 10% of the damage inflicted. Going back to our clip here, what do we see in red? we see 2 War Master procs, which is absolutely brilliant. Really good addition. This could be a bug. Now, this could be a bug. I don't want to get people too excited, but there's also going to be a very bad part if this is a bug and it's actually going to relate to Fane. So let's not jump onto that too yet. So as we can see here, and as we know about champions overall, unless it says has a chance to place an extra hit, like someone like Elaine, Ushan with that A1, that is the only way to proc War Master an additional time on the same skill. However, with this Barbarian, we simply have attacks one enemy 2 times, which is proccing War Master twice, which is unreal and unbelievable. It's really cool to see from a champion like this. Now, as you can probably assume, I did say there's the same interaction with Fane. This also happens with her A1, and let's see if it happens here. Okay, so as we just saw, 34,000 times 2. She doesn't hit hard, obviously, but 7,000 damage is really, really underwhelming. But we just saw it here that her damage is actually more than it should be because she is double proccing War Master, and even if we go to Fane, just to make sure I'm covering all of my bases and I'm not missing anything here, attacks one enemy 2 times. Each hit has a 35% chance of sealing 5% of the target's current turn meter. So this is also not an extra hit mechanic. This is simply an attacks one enemy 2 times. But as we saw from the video clip, it is also proccing War Master twice. So these are things to really look at, try to understand here. Obviously, we used her A2, which was nice, but now Fane just took a turn. 37 seconds in. It wasn't a counterattack. The A3 was active. Let's look at this one more time. She already used her poison. Everything else is off cooldown, and she elected not to use that A3, which is the defense down and weaken, even though defense down or weaken wasn't applied to the boss already from someone like Martyr. Really disappointing to see. And once again, we just saw the double mastery proc there. So what does this mean for Fane? Is this a bug? Can this be fixed? Now, I can only speculate on this. So this is a case where she's actually using... Let's go back to that because it was really important that just happened. This is where I tried to figure out where on the turn meter made sure this didn't happen again. So as we saw here, let's scroll back a little bit more. So comparing it to before, the turn meter is actually higher than it was before. So this means that instead of the turn meter having to be below a certain threshold or above a certain threshold, I think it literally has to be at a certain threshold for this champion to use that A3. So as we can see here, we have defense down on the boss, making her different than Draco. However, all the other information we have leads me to believe that she is similar to Draco because every other time outside of the turn meter being at this very, very specific tick mark here on the clan boss's turn meter, she's electing not to use it. So here we see her using that defense down and weaken, and this is another ability where she's also proccing War Master on each individual hit, which is another big thing. So not to get too distracted from my original point and what I was trying to say, so we saw that. I'm still not sure how it really works. I wanted to say it's just because of a low turn meter. I wanted to say it's just because of a high turn meter, but as we saw there, the results are simply inconsistent. However, there has to be some certain mechanic making it so she will not use defense down and weaken. And unfortunately, for a team that isn't in a 2-to-1 ratio, I found 90% of the time she will never use defense down and weaken, which is killer to any time you're trying to replicate this. And you just hate to see it because she could have been such a cool champion. Now the question is, and this is where I was talking about speculating, what is the next step? Is this a bug? Is this going to be fixed? Now, if this does get fixed, let's first talk about the additional War Master procs. The way War Master is currently working for Fane as well as Barroth the Bloodsoaked is not the same for any other champion in this entire game based on the tooltip and how it's stated. So that is a huge claim right there, huge fact, and possibly something they can look into to change. Maybe they didn't anticipate the AI to work this way, so they're going to revert that. What is this going to do? This is going to reduce Fane's damage, which is already extremely low, this is going to reduce Barroth's damage. And Barroth is a very strong champion, and he could definitely be game changing for a lot of people since he does offer that shield, that heal. He has the opportunity to place that defense down or attack down with his A3, and on top of that, every single skill he has now can proc War Master twice, really increasing his value in the clan boss. Especially the fact that he is also an HP based champion. There's also additional survivability there on top of the damage he can provide from his kit. So removing that from the game does seem likely if it does get to a reporting phase and the devs say, yes, we did make a mistake. So it's going to be equally bad for both of these champions. However, now let's talk about Fane. What are the odds that they fix her defense down and weaken? And unfortunately, I want to speculate the odds are extremely low. As mentioned before, there are already tons of champions who have issues with either health percentages on the clan boss, turn meter on the clan boss. We can think of champions like Tyrant, Ixthamor. Everyone's frustrated he's not using his HP burn once the clan boss goes to a certain health, which should have been fixed a long time ago. We have Razin Scarhide, who will not use his A1, he will use his A3 and try to reduce the clan boss's turn meter if the clan boss's turn meter is at a certain level when they do have that opportunity there. But once again, really quickly, I just paused it in what we can see here just to see if she would use that A3 because the turn meter was around the same point that it was when she used it the other time. And surprisingly enough, she ended up not using the defense down and weaken. So once again, this is why I said it's extremely confusing and how I don't have a perfect answer as to why it's not working. Because if it was strictly turn meter based and it was just over a certain threshold, she should have used her defense down and weaken since the bar was at that same exact spot and she did elect to use it last time. So unfortunately, people who are really banking on Fane, it's not too late. I apologize for not getting this video out earlier to you. This is what you have to know about Fane. So the choice is going to be in your hands. What do you want to gamble with as far as what Plarium's actually going to do with this? And I think it's very important, and you really have to think about your resources, how you value your resources, because in my opinion, Fane is extremely underwhelming. Her base stats were awful, and now this huge hiccup with her AI really isn't looking good. And if they do in fact end up fixing the double War Master proc, we're in even more trouble overall. And I don't know, there's just nothing good that I have to say at the moment as far as Fane goes, besides the fact that she's an epic. You can't fuse her. You can manual defense down and weaken. Here's another example where she does use defense down and weaken. Another time where I said this makes no sense. I tried to figure this out, and there's yet to be some type of consistent layout where she's always using it. Here she sometimes isn't using it there. Maybe if I did this run 150 times I could figure something out, but I really wanted to fuse the Sausage Frog, and he's a ton of fun to play with. That pretty much is my conclusion on what we're talking about here as far as Fane and Barroth goes. Titan's fine. He's an awesome champion. As you can see throughout the run here, he's been reviving Fane, who's been dying because I couldn't get her stats as optimal as I would like them to be. So Titan's the only champion that nothing wrong, no bonuses happening with him as far as War Master goes. He's hitting hard as he should be, so all of that's perfectly fine. I do want to let you know that I did pull Ursuga something Caller. I call her Thick Caller. I'm not really sure what her actual name is. The new Void Legendary, so you can expect a Champion Spotlight video on Ursuga where I properly test her, because a lot of people said there's not any good videos besides speculations on this new champion, even if someone was able to test her out. And I've been using her in Arena on stream. She's extremely overpowered if you use her correctly. I'm really excited to show you guys that. Also, obviously, I'm going to be doing a complete breakdown on the Fusion champion. I've also been using him in Arena and absolutely shocking people on stream what that champion can actually do. So I'm really excited. We have a really fun 2 to 3 more days of my YouTube videos that are coming out. Can't wait to share it with you guys. So that's going to wrap up this video here today. I want to thank you all for watching. Don't forget, if you like this content, subscribe, turn that notification bell on so you don't miss these upcoming videos that are going to be huge for sure. And I will see you all in those next uploads.